So I just had my graduation, so I was a little busy with that. So now we will just do economics, maybe market equilibrium. But then before that, we need to attend 5 4 markers and 3 6 markers for economics. So 5 4 markers, I'm planning it to do from micro second chapter, macro second, third, and fourth chapter, and one more chapter. Okay, micro second and third chapter, macro second, third, and the fourth chapter, so it's 5. And for 6 markers, I'm planning to do microeconomics second chapter and macros second and third chapter. So now according to that, we will just do market equilibrium. We will just complete it. So in perfect competition, buyers and sellers are price takers. A situation where the plans of all consumers and firm is the perfect match, that's called an equilibrium situation. As a result of increase in the number of firms, there's an increase in supply, then supply curve shifts towards the right. The firms earn supernormal profit as long as the price is greater than the minimum of average cost. The government imposing upper limit on the price of goods is price ceiling. The government imposing lower limit is price floor. In a perfectly competitive market, equilibrium occurs when market demand is equal to market supply. If the supply curve is rightward and demand curve shifts leftward, equilibrium price will be decreasing. Wage is determined at the point where the demand for labor and supply of labor curves intersect. In labor market, households are the supplies of labor. Due to rightward shifts in both demand and supply curves, the equilibrium price remains unchanged, same, or constant. It is assumed that in a perfectly competitive market, an invisible hand is at play. Next is the matchups. Adam Smith, operation of invisible hand, price ceiling, upper limit on prices, market equilibrium, QD is equal to QS, possibility of supernormal profit, attraction of new firms, price flow, lower limit on price. Market equilibrium, it is a situation where market demand is equal to market supply. Equilibrium price, it is a price where equilibrium is reached. Why do we say that there's an excess demand in the market? When quantity demanded is more than quantity supplied, you tell that situation is it excess demand. Price ceiling is the upper limit of price imposed on price of goods and services. Price floor is the lower limit imposed on price of goods and services. So floor is generally below, so you just write lower, and ceiling is always at the top. So you tell that's the upper limit, through which legislation the government ensures that the wages of the rate of laborers does not fall below a particular level, that's minimum wage legislation. Define equilibrium price and quantity. Price at which equilibrium is reached is equilibrium price, and the quantity demanded and supplied at equilibrium price is equilibrium quantity. Two possible ways in which simultaneous shift of both demand and supply. Both supply and demand curve shifts towards the right. Both supply and demand curve shifts towards the left. What is marginal revenue product labor? For each extra unit of labor, when the firm gets an additional benefit equal to marginal revenue times marginal product, it is called marginal revenue product. So marginal revenue product is nothing but marginal revenue into the marginal product. Okay, so anything marginal is the addition to the total product or the total quantity. So marginal is always an addition to the quantity of units that you already possess. Next is the difference between excess demand and excess supply. Excess demand is a situation where market demand is more than market supply. Excess supply where market supply is more than market demand. Price of product increases, price of product decreases. Here quantity demanded is more than quantity supplied. Quantity supplied is more than quantity demanded. How is wage determined in the labor market? It is determined when the demand and supply curves intersect of the curves of labor, where demand and supply curves of labor is balanced. Okay, when both the demand and supply curves of labor intersect, and where the demand and supply curve of the labor is balanced. Next, we are doing the 6 markers of this chapter. Okay, what is explain the simultaneous shift of demand and supply curve in perfect competition with the help of diagrams. So I will just be explaining the sum and substance of the entire answer. So here there are different situations where demand and supply can move. Then there are simultaneous shifts, and it happens in 4 ways, where demand and supply shifts towards right, demand and supply shifts towards your right, left, and when demand shifts towards the left, supply shifts towards the right, and vice versa. When demand shifts towards your right, supply shifts towards your left. So this is the table. Okay. So first, both demand and supply shifts towards the left. Then there's a quantity decrease, and the price may increase, decrease, or remain constant. Here, both shifts towards the right, and there's an increase, and may increase, decrease, or remain constant. When demand shifts towards the left, supply shifts towards the right, may increase, decrease, or remain constant, and the price decreases. When the demand shifts towards the right, supply shifts towards the left, may increase, decrease, or remain constant, and the price increases. So technically, you remember these four. First it's left, right, and then left, right. Repeat first, right, left, right. Repeat the same two in the next. Left, right, and the opposite. Okay. Decrease, increase, may increase, decrease, or remain constant, may increase, decrease, or remain constant. Just remember these two and you can write these two. Okay. Decrease, increase for the third and the fourth, it comes for the price, and may increase, decrease, or remain constant for the quantity, it comes towards your left. Okay. So that's how you remember that. So here each row of the table describes the direction in which the equilibrium price and quantity shifts for each possible combination for the simultaneous shifts of demand and supply. So here if you see this diagram, OX axis represents quantity, OY axis represents price. Here DD is the demand curve and SS is the supply curve. So the demand and the supply curve shifts rightward. That is from DD to D1 D1 and SS to S1 S1. Okay, here both of them shifts rightward, where the price remains constant at P, but then the equilibrium quantity moves from the Q to Q1. Okay, price is constant but quantity moves from Q to Q1. Next, it's this diagram. Here in this diagram, the demand curve shifts leftward and the supply curve shifts rightward. The equilibrium quantity remains the same, but then price decreases from P to P1. Okay, so the quantity remains the same, but then price is decreased from P to P1. Next is equilibrium quantity with a fixed number of buyers. So here under perfect competition, market is said to be in equilibrium when market demand is equal to market supply. Here market demand refers to total quantities demanded by all individuals in the market, and market supply refers to total quantities offered for sale. Here both buyers and sellers are price takers and none of them can influence the change in the price level. So with the help of market demand and market supply, we will be able to determine where the market will be in equilibrium when the number of firms is fixed. So if you see this diagram right over here, okay, SS curve shows how much of the commodity would the firms wish to supply at different prices, and demand curve shows how much of the commodity is demanded or how much of the commodity would the consumer be willing to purchase at different prices. Here, so at E, the market supply curve intersects with the market demand, so where QD is equal to QS. So if price is P1, the demand is Q2 and the supply is Q4. Okay, but then here therefore there's excess demand where some consumers are unable to obtain the commodity at all. But then similarly, if you see in price in P2, the demand is Q2 and the supply is Q3. So when the price increases, the demand falls and the quantity supplied also increases. So technically P is the equilibrium price and Q is the equilibrium quantity achieved. So here the demand and supply curves of wheat are given by QD, and QD is equal to 200 and QS is equal to 120 plus P. So we need to actually find the equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, and when demand and we need to also find the quantity of demand and supply when P is greater than equilibrium price, and the quantity of demand and supply when P is lesser than the equilibrium price. Okay, so for this, you take both the equations, that's QD is equal to 200 minus P and QS is equal to 120 plus P. So you get 120 on this side on your left because 200 is greater. So 200 minus 120 is equal to P plus P, because when this P comes to the other side of the equation, it automatically becomes plus. So 200 minus 120 is 80. So 80 is equal to 2P. So P is equal to 80 by 2. That's going to be 40. So next you take QD is equal to 200 minus P, QS is equal to 120 plus P. So here you consider the number 40. So 200 minus 40 and 120 plus 40. So 200 minus 40 is 160. And so here quantity demanded is 160 and quantity supplied is also 160. Next, you take when P is 50. So you do the same. Okay, you consider standard equation which is given 120 plus P. So you take 200 minus 50, 120 plus 50. So you get 150 here and 170 here. The last number that you consider is going to be 30. So QD is equal to 200 minus P and QS is equal to 120 plus P. 200 minus 30 is 170 and 120 plus 30 is going to be 150. So here QD is greater than QS and here QS is greater than QD. So the equilibrium price is going to be 40. The equilibrium quantity demanded is going to be 160 and the quantity supply is also 160. So when price is greater than equilibrium price, the quantity demanded is 150 and the quantity supply is 170 because quantity supplied is more than quantity demanded. And when price is lesser than the equilibrium price, the quantity demanded is going to be 170 and the quantity supplied is 150. So we're done with this chapter. If any doubts, please go down the comment box and just ask me your queries, and I hope that I will be able to reply to all of them. Thank you. Doing one more chapter, that is unit for determination of income and employment. Consumption which is independent of income is automobile consumption. Value of MPC lies between 0 and 1. Point where ex ante aggregate demand is equal to the ex ante aggregate supply is equilibrium. Easy availability of credit encourages investment. In a situation of excess demand, demand is more than level of output. CY shows the dependence of consumption as income. Savings is that part of income that is not consumed. APC is the consumption of per unit of income. Investment is defined as the addition to the I'll just confirm that, the fourth one. Size of the multiplier depends on the value of marginal propensity to consume. I is a positive constant which represents the autonomous investment in the economy. Next is the matchup. Savings is Y minus C. Raw material is intermediate good. Consumption per unit of income is APC. Aggregate demand for final goods is C plus I plus CY. Excess demand is it leads to increase in the prices in the long run. So we're just doing 4 markers from this chapter. I guess we have 1 markers. Write the meaning of autonomous consumption, the consumption which is independent of income. Marginal propensity to consume, it is the change in savings per unit change in income. Average propensity, it is the savings per unit of income. Full employment level of income, it is a process where all factors of production are fully employed in the production process. 2 fiscal variables which influence aggregate demand is tax and government expenditure. Formula of MPC is delta C by delta Y. Next is the 2 markers. Excess demand and deficit demand. Where demand is more than level of when demand is more than the level of output, it is excess demand, and when demand is not enough to employ all factors of production, it is deficit demand. So investment multiplier, it is the ratio of total increment to the initial increment in autonomous expenditure. So that's delta Y by delta A. Okay, so here if you see Y, it is the total increment in final goods, and A is the initial increment in autonomous expenditure, and C is nothing but the size of the multiplier. So paradox of thrift, as people become thriftier, they end up saving less or more, saving less or same as before in aggregate. That is known as paradox of thrift. So the factors which cause change in aggregate demand is change in consumption and change in investment. We have 3-4 markers in this chapter. So give the meaning of aggregate demand function. How can it be obtained graphically? The aggregate demand function shows the total demand at each level of income. The aggregate demand function can be obtained by vertically adding the consumption and the investment function. Aggregate demand, it shows the total level of demand at each level of income. So as your income increases, your aggregate demand also changes. The aggregate demand is obtained by vertically adding the consumption function. Aggregate demand is parallel to the consumption function as they have the same slope of C. Explain the consumption function. The consumers can express the consumers demand can be expressed by the equation C dash is equal to C dash plus CY, where C is the autonomous expenditure and C dash is the marginal propensity to consume. The autonomous expenditure and C dash is the marginal propensity to consume. This is the graphical representation of the consumption function. So here C dash is the intercept of the consumption and C is the slope of function, which is equal to alpha. Next is the investment function. In a two-sector model, there are two sources of final demand. The first is the consumption and second is investment. The investment function is shown as I is equal to I dash. So this is normally showed as a horizontal line which is equal to a height I above the horizontal axis. So this is a horizontal line above the horizontal axis. I is autonomous, which means that it is going to be the same whenever there's a change in the level of income. So we're done with this chapter. At one point in the aggregate demand function, so here OM is equal to C, OJ is equal to J, and OL is equal to C plus I. So you need to always remember that the first parallel line is C dash plus I dash plus CY, and the second parallel line is C is equal to C dash plus CY, and this is going to be the horizontal axis where I is equal to I dash. OX is income and OY is the demand and the investments. Done with this chapter. If you have any doubts, go down the comment box and comment down your queries, and I will be able to help you all with that.